things. Here's the thing that worries all of us in this audience. We're counting on the sensibility of the American people, whether it's on a ranch in Wyoming or on a farm in Mississippi or in the inner cities of places like Seattle, that they can see what's going on, and they're going to have common sense, and they're going to go to the polls. And we're counting on that. If that doesn't happen in November, we are gone. One of the things that I've said before, when suburbanites are threatened, it's a whole new ballgame. If they're coming to the downtown area and they're protesting, it's not where you are. But if all of a sudden they're coming to Oak Street on your neighborhood, and that's exactly what's happening in Seattle, and you got to believe it was ultimately declared a riot by law enforcement, a group calling for the burning down of police precincts in every city marched through. It wasn't Seattle, it was Portland. In a Portland neighborhood happened night before last. The incident comes as Portland has been rocked by over 2 months of violence. In one of the numerous videos that was posted to social media night before last, rioters could be heard chanting, "Every city, every town, burn the precincts to the ground." When this starts coming to the precincts, I think it's more of a reality that you better get something done at the polls.
You're right. And you know, the thing that gives me great comfort is that what's going on in Portland and Seattle is just totally absurd. And thank God we live in Mississippi, because I have hope that that kind of stuff is never going to be able to happen in Mississippi. You know, we're never going to defund the police in Mississippi. We're never going to have, if we have riots, then there will be a crackdown on that quickly, I hope, in Mississippi. So, you know, that's one of the many reasons I moved home. And I tell some of my friends who agree with me ideologically, who are my age, who moved off to California or New York or wherever, who are paying absurd rents, who are working 6 days a week, who could never raise a kid in those towns, and then who have to confront this absurd activism when they go out on the street. So if you want to get rid of all that, you could just move home. Things are going pretty well back here.
Yeah, and I think more people are. As a matter of fact, when you start looking, the mayor of New York is having problems right now keeping people there. They're fleeing New York by the thousands, if not tens of thousands. They've had enough, and they've realized something. I can do what I'm doing in Mississippi just as well as I can do it in New York. And that's transformative, and I think people are looking for small towns now to do those type of things. I want to ask you, first of all, you heard, I don't know if you heard Hob Bryan this morning, and we were talking about the lawsuit. Your thoughts, and I know that you're separated from that, but as state auditor, your input on that and your thoughts about the lawsuit against the governor.
Yeah, so I read the complaint last night and taking off my state auditor hat and putting on my constitutional nerd hat. I find the case pretty fascinating, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the court does with it, because it does seem like it's a question of constitutional law. I mean, we have the Fordyce opinion from the 90s, and we have the Barber opinion, but this is slightly different from those. So this afternoon, I think I'm going to go back and read the Fordyce opinion from the 90s and the Barber opinion and take a look at them again, because it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this plays out. And frankly, I'm not sure how the court's going to rule.
Why didn't the Supreme Court put a finality to this and leave so much vague gray area during the Musgrove administration and that ruling? Yeah.
You know, you see this from courts a lot. Courts will tackle the specific question that's right in front of them. And when they go outside of answering that specific question, we call that dicta in the law. And you know, sometimes they don't have any dicta in their opinions at all. Sometimes they have dicta, and that dicta is really not binding in the future. So what that means is that we may have one specific kind of veto in the 90s, and the court has to rule on that veto. And then you know, fast forward a few years, Governor Musgrove vetoes a different sort of piece of language, and then we're going to have a ruling on that. And now we've got another situation where Governor Reeves has vetoed a different sort of language, you know, vetoed whole paragraphs. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, I think.
I did ask Hi Brian, did he know who was paying the lawyer for the Speaker of Philip Gunn, representing, I guess, the House, or representing. And, of course, he said it was a trivial matter, and I think it was a slap in the face of a lot of people out there who don't think it's a trivial matter. When we have to pay a lawyer, we'd like to know who's paying that lawyer. When either House or Senate, or there is a squabble like that, why wouldn't it go through the state auditor or the attorney general's office, I should say? Why wouldn't it go through there? Do you have to have private lawyers, and who pays for them?
Yeah, I heard you ask that question. I don't think it's a trivial question. To disagree with the senator, I think if you sued him tomorrow and he had to pay for a lawyer to defend himself, right, he probably wouldn't think it's too trivial. To be honest with you, when you ask that question, I think the same thing. So, you have an interesting situation where.
Hold on for a second. We're getting some skip and breaking up a little bit on here, but we got a break. So can we come back in just a second and answer that question?
Yes, sir.
On who pays who? We get a payment bill in the mail, or how's that work out? More, and also, Chad White has released his plans to audit over $1.25 billion sent to the state of Mississippi in the CARES Act. We'll talk about that. It's a 5-part plan. What is that about? It's all coming. And we were talking about the hiring a lawyer and some other things, too, before we get to the CARES Act. Your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is not particularly new. We have branches of government that sue one another. When you've got the government against the government, it's difficult to have the attorney general representing both sides. So I was wondering the same question that you asked earlier, which is how lawyers get paid in this situation. I have no idea how the lawyer in this particular situation is being paid. Sometimes they do it pro bono, sometimes they don't. So I'll be curious to find that out too.
Very good. All right, let's talk about this, because a lot of money is coming in, $1.25 billion, and it's almost hard to keep track of it. How are you doing that?
Yeah, you're right, Paul. So what you're referencing is the $1.25 billion that we got in federal stimulus money because of COVID-19. And I've told folks that, when we say billions and that sort of thing, a lot of times those numbers are too big to even wrap our heads around. But think about it this way: state revenue last year was just south of about $6 billion. So in addition to that $6 billion that the state is spending, pile another $1.25 billion of new money into it. And that's the huge influx of cash that we're going to see in Mississippi over the course of the next 6 months. So another crazy piece of this is that the federal government has told us that money, that $1.25 billion, has to be spent by December 30th of this year. So we got a bunch of new cash flowing through Mississippi with a very tight timeline on when it has to be spent. And of course, it's on my office to audit all that money. So the good thing about this, I guess, in this sense, is that Mississippi has a lot of experience dealing with a huge influx of cash. So we went through Katrina in 2005. Everybody went through the recession in 2008 and got a huge stimulus in 2009. So we really, for this particular situation, we've broken out the old playbooks of how we handled those situations, what lessons did we learn, and we crafted a playbook for the next 6 months to try to audit some of that money. And the whole goal really is to prevent fraud and to let people know that we're watching. We know that, if folks know there's a bunch of money out there, the temptation to use that money inappropriately or steal some of it or buy goods that they could then steal and resell, the temptation for all that goes up when you see a lot more money flowing. So we've also got a responsibility to let people know that somebody's out there watching it, and if you want to steal it, then we're looking forward to making an example of you.
Well, the deadline for distribution doesn't help, knowing that there is a deadline that's relatively soon when you start talking about December.
That's right. So if you think back about Katrina or the 2009 stimulus money, we had a lot more time to spend that money, which means that auditors had a lot more time to craft preventative measures to keep the money from being stolen. In this situation, we don't have a ton of time. We've got a very short time fuse.
What's your advice as state auditor to these folks who want the money?
So first thing that I would say is, if you ever have a question, if you're running a government office, you're running a school district, you're running a state agency, if you ever have a question about how you should be spending money and what is legal and what is not, you can always call us. So we have a team of lawyers and CPAs on standby constantly. You can call them at 1-800-321-1275, or you can email them. You can find their contact information on our website. reach out to them and ask them if what you're thinking about doing is legal. We're doing trainings all over the state virtually. We're constantly answering questions so folks can get answers to their questions if they want to know how to spend this money. The other big piece of this is if there's somebody out there, and I'm absolutely certain there's going to be, if there's somebody out there who wants to steal a piece of this money, they also need to know that we're out auditing this money as it is being handed out. So, normally an audit would occur after all the money's been spent. Well, in this case, the money is being spent so quickly, we didn't feel comfortable doing that. So my team crafted this plan to basically audit the money as it is going out the door. As soon as the check is cut, we're looking at how that check flowed. And then when we see something, if we see criminal activity, we're going to immediately investigate it before December 30th is up. So, that's going on as well, and folks should be aware of it.
I think one of the things, too, that you mentioned in an earlier appearance is this is not a place for creative thinking when you're filling out that application. I think I could do this. I think I could do that. This might work, and filling out an application with less than honest answers on there is not a good idea. You could wind up at the very least having to pay the money back, at the very most being indicted.
That's exactly right. This is not a time to be creative with the truth. What folks need to know is, you've got a responsibility on all these documents that you're filling out to fill them out accurately. And there's a lot of people down from small businesses who are filling out forms trying to get this money all the way up to state agencies who are crafting documents to try to get the money. If they've got a question, they need to call the people administering those funds. They need to call us. The other thing that I would say is this, to tack onto that. Normal people, everyday folks who are paying their taxes are paying for this money. I mean, the money doesn't come out of nowhere. This is money that comes from the federal government, and we pay federal taxes. That's what's financing all this. So everyday folks like my dad who work in the oil field, they need to know where this money is going. So in addition to all this work that we're doing, we're also putting up a website, and it's live right now, and you can go to that website and you can see where this money is flowing. And as we get more data on how the money is actually spent, we're going to continually update that website. So you can go to that website at www.osa.ms.gov/COVID-19.
One more time.
Or if you just if you Google State Auditor Mississippi, you'll see our website, and at the very top in the toolbar, there's a link that says COVID-19. You can click on that, and you'll see where the money's going. And you'll even be able to see, once we spend it all, you'll be able to see the vendors that got it. So if there are companies that got a big chunk of this money, you'll be able to see which companies got it. And to me, that level of transparency is going to prevent fraud on the front end. If people know that people are watching this, they're going to be scared to steal it.
I think that's interesting reading. Now, look, I don't want to let you go, and then 15 minutes from now, you have a press conference of another Shadrach attack. So anything out there we should know now before, and don't do this to us. Don't give it 15 minutes after you get off the air tomorrow. Just go on and let's do it now.
I promise you that today there will be no more news out of the state auditor's office. Tomorrow, no guarantee.
Yeah. Tomorrow's a different ball game, right? I noticed the flag in the back. Right. I noticed the flag behind you. It's an earlier American flag.
It's a Valley Forge replica. It's a flag that I love, and my dad actually built the frame for it out of some old wood off of our house back in Jones County.
What do you think about, just on a sidebar here, have you seen some of the flag entries? They've just been remarkable, haven't they?
I have. I have some favorites in there.
Everybody does. Yeah.
I saw a catfish holding a shotgun. That was one of my top 3, I think. So we'll see where we go.
I think I also saw possum on one of them, and the mockingbird, and a lot of magnolias, of course, and some catfish. But it is. I think they got over 2,000.
My staff wanted to do one with just my ears on it, and I was incredibly offended by that idea. I think that's a terrible idea. Talked him out of it.
Yeah, but it's good counsel just to go on and talk about it, and it'll work out. I did mention the other day, right. we every time I do this, I put on one of the face masks, and the ears, it's too tight. and I look in the mirror and I think, hey, Shad, how are you? How are you?
Wow, I don't know if I would have done that joke in front of him.
Mirror every day, Paul. That's great. That's great.
Always good having you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for taking the time. Take care. Go to the website because it's good reading. I'll see if I can maybe go grab some stuff for tomorrow on there, too. Shad White, State Auditor. We got...